they are. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ted Rowland's testimony in the cheating wife murder trial this morning has been focusing on cell phone data. We all know how important that could be. The defendant, Nikki Entzel, accused of conspiring to kill her husband, then trying to cover it up by setting the house on fire.
The fire had already done its work by the time the first responders arrived. Against the frozen backdrop of a North Dakota winter, flames tore through a home near Bismarck, sending thick black smoke into the night sky. Firefighters rushed toward the inferno, expecting to battle a devastating house fire. What they discovered inside would trigger one of the state's most shocking murder investigations. Buried within the wreckage was the body of 42-year-old Chad Entzel. At first glance, it appeared to be a tragic death caused by fire. Another family shattered by misfortune, another life lost in a sudden disaster. But disasters do not usually leave behind gunshot wounds. As investigators examined Chad's remains, a horrifying truth began to emerge. The fire had not killed him. Chad Entzel was already dead before the flames engulfed the home. Someone had taken his life. And someone had tried to erase the evidence. What appeared to be a tragic accident quickly transformed into a homicide investigation filled with betrayal, secrecy, obsession, and a deadly conspiracy that would eventually lead authorities to accuse Chad's own wife of helping plan his murder. To understand how the case reached such a devastating conclusion, investigators had to go back long before the fire. Chad Entzel was known as a hard-working family man. Friends and relatives described him as devoted to those he loved and committed to building a stable life. Like many people, he spent his days balancing work, family responsibilities, and future plans. From the outside, his marriage to Nikki Sue Entzel appeared relatively ordinary. They shared years together, responsibilities together, and a life that seemed familiar to many families across America. But appearances often conceal realities hidden from public view. Behind closed doors, tensions had allegedly been building for years. Relationships rarely collapse in a single moment. More often, they deteriorate quietly. Resentment grows unnoticed. Emotional distance widens. Trust weakens. Small fractures slowly become impossible to repair. According to evidence later presented by prosecutors, Nikki had become involved in a relationship with another man. His name was Earl Howard. Howard lived in Canada, hundreds of miles away from North Dakota. Yet distance did little to slow the connection developing between them. Investigators would later uncover extensive communication between Nikki and Howard. Phone records, messages, travel evidence, and digital trails suggested a relationship that had grown increasingly serious over time. What initially appeared to be an affair soon became something investigators viewed with far greater concern. As detectives reconstructed events, they found evidence that suggested the relationship may have evolved beyond romance into a dangerous partnership. The warning signs were subtle at first. Communication intensified. Plans appeared to be forming. Financial concerns became part of the picture. Insurance policies would later become a significant focus of the investigation. To prosecutors, these pieces were not isolated events. They were fragments of a larger story, slowly taking shape. A story that would ultimately end in violence. Then came the final days of Chad's life. The details uncovered by investigators painted a disturbing picture. Authorities alleged that Nikki and Howard conspired together to eliminate Chad. According to prosecutors, the goal was not only to remove him from the equation, but also to benefit financially afterward. The exact conversations that led to this alleged conspiracy may never be fully known. What is known is that during the final days of 2019 and the opening days of 2020, events moved rapidly toward tragedy. When Chad was killed, investigators determined he had been shot multiple times. The violence itself was shocking, but what happened next revealed an even deeper level of calculation. After Chad's death, authorities concluded that the house was intentionally set on fire. The flames were not random. The fire was allegedly designed to destroy evidence, conceal the murder, and make investigators believe Chad had died in an accidental blaze. The killer or killers may have believed the fire would erase the truth forever. Instead, it became one of the most important pieces of evidence. Fire investigators quickly noticed irregular burn patterns throughout the home. Their findings suggested multiple points of origin. To trained investigators, the scene did not resemble an accidental fire. It looked staged. Every charred room became part of a puzzle. Every burned object became evidence. Every attempt to hide the crime created new clues. As forensic specialists worked through the ruins, detectives expanded the investigation beyond the fire scene. They examined financial records, travel histories, phone logs, electronic communications, surveillance footage. The resulting picture became increasingly difficult to ignore. Evidence allegedly connected Nikki and Howard to a conspiracy that prosecutors believed had been planned long before Chad's death. The investigation stretched across state lines and international borders. Witnesses were interviewed, timelines were reconstructed, movements were tracked. Every lead brought investigators closer to understanding what they believed had happened. One of the most significant developments came when Earl Howard eventually entered a guilty plea connected to the crime. His plea became a major turning point. For prosecutors, it reinforced their theory that Chad's death was not the result of a spontaneous act, but part of a coordinated plan. The case then moved toward trial. Inside the courtroom, jurors heard evidence gathered during years of investigation. Prosecutors argued that Nikki Entzel had conspired with Howard to murder Chad, and then cover up the crime through arson and evidence destruction. The defense challenged those claims and maintained her innocence. The trial became a battle of timelines, forensic findings, digital evidence, and competing interpretations of the facts. Jurors examined phone records. They reviewed investigative findings. They listened to witness testimony. They considered the extensive evidence presented by both sides. After hearing the case, the jury reached its decision. Nikki Sue Entzel was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit arson, and conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence. The verdict marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. For Chad's family, no conviction could restore what had been taken from them. A husband was gone. A father was gone. A son, friend, and loved one would never return. Court documents and testimony revealed details that transformed grief into heartbreak. What had initially appeared to be a tragic accident became the story of a man whose life ended at the center of an alleged betrayal by people he trusted. In February 2023, Nikki Entzel received a sentence of life in prison, with the possibility of parole. The legal system had reached its conclusion, but for those left behind, the emotional consequences would continue indefinitely. The community that followed the case was forced to confront an unsettling reality. The most dangerous threats do not always come from strangers lurking in the shadows. Sometimes they emerge from relationships built on trust. Sometimes they grow quietly behind closed doors where no one else can see. And sometimes the pursuit of desire, freedom, money, or escape becomes powerful enough to destroy lives forever. Today, the burned remains of that North Dakota home exist only in photographs and evidence files. The flames are gone. The smoke has disappeared. The courtroom battles have ended. Yet, the questions remain. How does a relationship reach the point where murder becomes part of the story? At what moment does secrecy become conspiracy? And how many warning signs go unnoticed before tragedy finally arrives? As you reflect on the case of Chad and Nikki Entzel, consider this. Do you believe every major tragedy leaves warning signs behind? Or are some betrayals so carefully hidden that the truth only becomes visible after it is far too late? If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of North Dakota's most disturbing murder conspiracies, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who follow true crime, subscribe to Crimevault, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new case.